Hi, you're watching India Post Live, India's first web TV news conversation online. I'm Shivraj, and today we're discussing whether it's possible to have IITs in every state. That's right, Narendra Modi's government has announced that they do want to have IITs, or at least are thinking of IITs in every state. You too can join in on the conversation by logging on to indiapostlive.com. You can also tweet with us, #IndiaPostLive, or use the handle @IndiaPostLive. Right, the government is actually mulling over a proposal to open IITs in every state. This despite the fact that new IITs started by the previous government have not really taken off. Let's take a look at why that's becoming such a major problem.
The new Modi government looks to be in a hurry to do too many things at once. And one of them seems to be the idea of having an IIT in every state. But is it really that good an idea to improve higher education in the country? UPA 1 decided to open 8 new IITs across the country in 2008 and 2009, but most are still struggling to get their infrastructure ready even now. These institutions do not have great faculty to keep the standards of education to the level of a normal IIT. At a time when the rankings of IITs are not even in the top 100 academic institutions in the world, the idea to have one in every state seems impractical. So is it ignorance on part of the government or just another of the new government's mere grand announcements?
So we're joined in studio on that discussion by a former IITian and also from the FNH Foundation, Nelson. So do you believe that opening so many IITs might actually face the danger of diluting the brand of the IITs that were once considered an esteemed organization?
Yeah, it can because in these kind of scenarios, these esteemed institutions, you have to keep one thing in mind. They have built the brand over years. That is not one day. So now, if you suddenly open up in number of IITs in a number of states, what actually there is a possibility that you compromise on quality of faculty, quality of infrastructure, quality of students. These are genuine questions. These are standard questions. So we have to be very cautious about what do we do with this IIT brand, because to be on the safer side, these are the best technical institutes that India has got.
Absolutely. So over the last 5 or 6 years, 8 new IITs came into being, and we already know that in terms of access to infrastructure, acquisition of land, getting proper housing for students, labs, were all becoming a problem. Shouldn't they first address that problem then, rather than jumping into upgrading or creating new IITs everywhere?
Yes, but the problem here with is, look at the old IITs. They were situated in certain places where there was nothing when they were established in the 1950s or 60s. Now those areas have developed. So the infrastructure that we are seeing, that is 50 years from the inception. So let's try to look at the new IITs in that light, that they will eventually come up. It takes some time, but again, to be very cautious, that you have to have this idea very clearly that you should not compromise on the quality and the brand of the institution.
Absolutely. We're also joined online by Anil Kumar, who's the founder of Jori 360. Now, Anil, you're a former IITian yourself. There are, of course, many challenges when it comes to quality of faculty in most of the old legacy IITs. How do you think this would pan out if they are going to open so many multitude of IITs all across the country?
Yeah, first of all, I should tell you that I support the expansion
Okay.
that is being discussed. I wholeheartedly support it.
Hello?
And I don't share the concern that most people may
Hello?
have that this would lead to a dilution of brand.
Right.
Granted, yes, if you are setting up additional IITs and they are to
एक
be
काम करना
as
बेटा,
good
इसमें
as
ये वाली
you
पोस्ट खोल
expect
दो,
an
पता
IIT
चल
to be,
जाएगा क्या चल रहा
you
है.
don't need to pump in the resources necessary.
हाँ, इंडिया पोस्ट करके खोल दो इसमें.
Come on,
Google
this is
पे.
not an intractable
Google
problem.
इंडिया पोस्ट.
Okay.
It's a
Live.
question of what level of support the government is planning to provide to these new IITs. And if it includes money, if it includes more of a free hand in hiring top talent, not just domestically, but also internationally, I don't see why even the faculty situation cannot be addressed.
But Anil, from our reading, the IIT Act itself is quite watertight when it comes to hiring foreign staff to teach at IITs. Apparently, non-citizens are not allowed to teach. Do you think that perhaps there should be a relook at both the legislation on IIT in tandem with what you just said, a lot more investment in infrastructure and facilities.
I have to admit, I haven't read the act, right? So I'll limit my comments to what I'm familiar with. And I can tell you that I have listened to IIT directors talk about the challenges with getting talent on board, and they see it as something can be, that they can do something about. Now, it doesn't have to be limited to hiring just uh, people of Indian origin, Indian citizens, right? You have many talented faculty overseas who happen to be of Indian origin who would be happy to come back to India uh, for the near term, perhaps permanently for family reasons, for personal reasons, to give back to the country. So again, there are ways in which you might be able to get talent even from overseas without necessarily having to change uh,
Sure.
legislation.
Okay, but Anil, also what about the issue of the existing new IITs that have come into being, 8 over the last 5 years? There have been a lot of teething problems vis-a-vis accessing land to acquire for the campuses, hostels for students. In fact, a lot of teaching faculty seem to be reluctant to go to these areas because they're seen as far-flung from the cities they're supposed to be located in.
Sure, maybe so, right? And there is probably a serious problem. But then it doesn't have to be an either or situation,
Sure.
right? The problem that you raised, that you're highlighting, are about execution. And if there is a will, there is surely a way. Now, talk about another example, not part of the IIT system, but the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad, right? There was strong political will, and I think the former Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu gets a lot of credit for paving the way for the establishment of the ISB. And look at it, within a decade, it came to be one of the top business schools in the country. So let's look at the problems that these newer IITs are facing that have come up in the past year and put in the resources necessary, give mandates to the people in charge of the IITs to run the organization as well as they need to be run. But it doesn't have to be a case of let's fix these before we talk about setting up newer IITs. We
Right.
know what it takes to set up newer IITs, right? If it's more than 100 crores that the IITs get a year, put in those resources. And if the government says that we want to set up these additional institutes, hold them accountable for whatever plan they come up with so that they don't end up with half-baked institutions. Right?
Absolutely. And that's a valid point.
The focus was on why we need additional IITs, and I think that is an important problem, and I'm happy to get into that discussion too.
Sure, sure, and we will come back to that because we also have Nelson in studio who was actually talking about perhaps newer IITs catching up like the old IITs did with the infrastructure around. But given the current competitive environment, where a lot of students who are sitting for the IITG are looking at the long-term goal of being hired by companies, do you really see that we have the luxury of that time to catch up, to create the infrastructure around existing or new IITs being proposed?
Yeah, actually we do, because I tell you why. Because if you see the composition of students that we have in old IITs and where they go in for jobs, primarily most of them go for jobs, very few go for higher studies and research, primarily most of them go for the job, and if you see the composition, who is hiring them? Hiring people are 95%, I'm talking about 2013 IIT Bombay, 95% was corporate sector.
Right.
Pure corporate sector. So what happens that they see the brand IIT and comes there, and how does they test? They test on the basic IIT JEE scores, they test on the basic aptitude. So that luxury, that students who is coming through IIT JEE has that potential, and the corporate world knows it too. But to compete with old IITs which are established, that will be a bit difficult, but that can be caught up in due course of time.
We're also joined by Mahesh Bhargav, who's the founder of a series of coaching institutes. Mahesh, the last time we spoke, you said you'd done a survey of those sitting for the exam, looking at the end goal of landing plum jobs. That's why they join IITs and they want that IIT tag. Now, what do you make of the proposal to have many, many more IITs across each state in the country?
Superficially speaking, seems to be a very lucrative thing that we have a lot many IITs. But I'm doubtful about the quality if Indian government has enough funds to finance these new IITs. And what about the teachers, availability of the teachers? uh, हमारे IITs में old IITs में ही there is shortage of teachers. So आई डाउट इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की भी कमी है जो हमारा आईआईटी जो नए 9 IITs खुले हैं 2009 2008 ऑनवर्ड्स दो द लास्ट in the old 7 IITs are very good. IIT Kharagpur, Madras, Kanpur. In 1951, it was started by the initiative of late Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. लेकिन मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये जो 9 IIT हैं इसमें ये जो नए खुले हैं इसमें ही टीचर्स की शॉर्टेज है, लेबोरेटरी की शॉर्टेज है, लाइब्रेरी की, तो क्वालिटी उतना मेंटेन करना थोड़ा मुश्किल काम है. क्वालिटी अगर मेंटेन करेंगे तो ये बहुत अच्छा रहेगा हम सभी के लिए.
All right. Coming back to you, Anil, you made a very key observation about political will. Now, there's been this criticism of governments till now that they haven't really put a lot of weight behind science and research. I mean, we're talking about being a scientific superpower, but less than 2% of the budget is set aside. Are you hopeful that with the thrust to set up new IITs, that this government might actually put its money where its mouth is?
It's hard to say. Let's ignore the new IITs while we're talking about this point.
Okay.
You already have established IITs. Let's take the original IITs. Include Roorkee if you want. Include IIT Varanasi if you want. They've been around for a long time. Right? They have established research programs. But even then, it can be argued that research at these institutions across the board may not be at par with the best in the world. Right? So we don't need to bring in the new IITs into this discussion. Yes, now I'm partial to this. I think that there's a lot of value that can be derived and from investments into research, into the sciences, and they can be percolated to society.
Right.
And you might question even whether it's important to do the many things that the government does, the many different ways in which it spends its money. But then the way I look at it is that before you even get into research, right, there's a broader foundation at the base. Providing better higher education to people is probably a more pressing concern than whether many of these graduates go on to postgraduate studies and go on into careers in science and research and make those longer term contributions. So I think if we are talking about the establishment of newer IITs, it needs to be to provide at least a baseline solid undergraduate education in engineering, sciences, and the humanities, which we need to ensure many more people have access to.
Okay, the other problem, Anil, was, and we were discussing this in studio, is that a lot of new students sitting for the IIT-G exam have in surveys said very clearly that they want the IIT brand to enable them to get plum jobs. Now, opening up new IITs, how would you see that actually happening given that corporates are pulling back on hiring? Would they even want to go to the newer locations and look at those students?
First of all, if students talk about wanting to get into the new IITs to get plum jobs, I think we agree, right? That's not a bad thing, right? That's human nature.
Sure.
We all want the best for ourselves and for people who are close to us. Whether corporates would go the extra mile or not, you can also argue that if there are IITs in every state, corporates wouldn't have to go out of their way
Absolutely.
to recruit, right? So it becomes more accessible. There are pros and cons about having IITs in every state. I would hope that, first of all, I would hope that it's only a matter of time when you have IITs, multiple IITs in every state. We can talk about, again, why we need more of that. And that it would be only a matter of time before the newer IITs attain higher standards and give the existing IITs a run for their money, right? When it comes to attracting even the best students who crack the JEE, the advanced JEE.
Sure.
But then once again, it's probably only a matter of time before corporates recognize that you have gems at these other places too. And look at the context in which we are having this discussion. India produces what, hundreds of thousands of engineers, but we've heard this often that you have a lot of people who are educated but not quite employable. If it
Right.
means that I have to go take two flights to get to one of these newer IITs, as a corporate executive, I wouldn't hesitate, knowing that yes, you have good students coming out of newer institutes too, lesser known institutes too. I
Okay.
don't
So,
think it should be a worry.
okay, so just coming back to connecting to the point of making it more accessible for campus placements, but also a lot of benchmarking globally on the ranking of an institution is based on citations, on how many times their faculty, their reputed alumni actually make a difference. Do you think that that would be diluted if there are too many new IITs? Because already the existing IITs are struggling to make it to the top 100 globally.
Okay, so let's see how you are saying this top 100 globally. These are based on certain criteria. One criteria is in your research.
Right.
Now, the only point that I think as a student that why people miss out that it is not about only money. See the problem. A BTech student goes into IIT, comes out of IIT with from an old IIT with an approximate 10 lakh job. Ensures if you want that student to do a higher education, what are you offering him and how much? Very less. So the incentive for a very bright young scholar to go to attain that level, so that this institute gets reputed in the world, comes in the world universities forum, so that incentive is very less.
That's very nice.
That's the problem. So unless you incentivize, so you will see students coming out of these IITs, these BTech programs, and going to MIT, Stanford, Harvard. How come they go there? They go there just because that for them it is not a very drastic difference in standard of living.
Okay.
In India, if you do that, let me give you an example. Somebody gets an 10 lakh in annum, and if you get into a master's program, an MTech program in IIT, you get 8,000 rupees per month. So that stark is the difference. Where is the incentive?
Where's the incentive?
Unless you give the bright scholars the incentive, look, if you do this, this is good for this, they don't. So to get to that level, you need super dedicated people, which are actually difficult to come by nowadays.
Absolutely, in a competitive world like
Yeah.
today. But just coming back, Anil, to your point that there might actually be potential for good in the new IITs. The current government has said that a lot has to be done in terms of standardizing, of appraisals of new institutions, of standards, very much like they're citing the China case, where a lot of their institutions seem to be making it to the rankings globally. What would you like to see happening going forward for this to actually be a success, rather than everyone sitting here cribbing that it's not going to work out?
So here's the thing. We have this disease in India where you constantly look overseas and look at their metrics and look at, oh, how do we rank, how do we compare? We don't have as many publications per faculty member. We don't have as high a fraction of faculty members who have PhDs. Look, let's focus on what are India's problems,
Right.
and what are the challenges, and how do we address the needs of the country, instead of applying some benchmark that may not be highest priority for people in India,
Sure.
or institutions in India, right? So come up with your own metrics. And it goes back to this. We have something that could be a demographic dividend, or it could be a demographic bomb, right? Half the country is what, below the age of 26?
Exactly.
You look at the ratio. I think 33, one third of the country may be below the age of 15. Look at how many people, how many hundreds of millions of people are going to be finishing high school in the coming years. Are there enough opportunities for them at the college level? Are there enough quality educational institutions that offer programs in engineering and the sciences to them? Right? That is going to be a big problem. And if you don't address their education needs, what are the opportunities that they're going to have for their careers? Right? So I think let's I hope understand that this is coming from a good place. We need more quality institutions.
Absolutely.
Forget how many publications. Forget the kind of research that would go on into these institutions. Face it, IITs today are not top class research institutions across the board, right? I mean, no disrespect to the fantastic professors who do groundbreaking research at the IITs, but across the board, it's not up to international levels.
Absolutely. So what Nelson in studio is actually saying is that the incentive to study further, to apply for further research grants, the incentives are very little. Do you believe that that needs to change for those who want to do groundbreaking and path-breaking research and innovation should be given a lot more to work with?
Sorry, there were some audio problems. I couldn't quite get what Nelson was saying. And can you repeat what you just asked me?
Right. What Nelson was saying is that for anyone to study further or for those wanting to do more in-depth research, the sort of compensation is very little, so they really opt then for corporate jobs. Do you think that needs to change? Because like you said earlier, it's not just about getting the job but being employable, and also holding up the IIT brand as one that is promoting greater research and path-breaking innovation.
Okay, we'll come back to the brand issue in a bit.
Absolutely.
And I do want to talk about the brand issue. About providing more incentives. Look, this is a free society, and you think about how free markets operate. If students have a choice between what they do in their careers and corporates offer them better opportunities, and if someone else wants them to stick around and help with research programs, it's up to them. Look, offer better incentives. Give them some reasons, not entirely financial, but give them some incentives to stick around. And it's not just unique to India. Look at it. Let's talk about, if you want, let's talk about the US, which is supposed to have the best research programs globally, right? Faculty members there, name a university, they have challenges in hiring top talent too.
Right.
The best undergraduate, the students from the best undergraduate institutions in the US don't necessarily go on, all of them or enough of them, into postgraduate programs, which is what has created the opportunity for students in other countries, bright students in India, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, to go to the US, in China. So it has helped the US that it has been seen as a place to go to do groundbreaking research. Their immigration policies have been favorable, and while there has been a lot of resentment towards immigration, we recognize that there are more pros than cons.
Right.
Here, it might mean that you provide incentives not only to talent within India, but offer opportunities to people of Indian origin to come and take up postgraduate program opportunities in the country.
Right.
So yes, if it's a question of more incentives need to be offered, look, if you want people, do what it takes. Don't wonder what does it take to get more people on board.
Okay. We're also getting a lot of tweets in. We've got a tweet from Surendran Nambiat who says, huge shares of IITians today go for sales, banking, finance jobs because these sectors offer better prospects than research.
Don't really agree to it because if you see what kind of jobs these guys do, these guys are typically goes into these big finance houses and do their algorithm thing. That is nothing to do with the research. Ask somebody who is doing it. That is a fixed process is there, and you need to do it quick.
Right.
That's the work. And what they check in a student when they come for hiring or these big shot companies come, they check how quickly can you learn. That's the only thing that they check. That's why they check the IIT JEE score. They never check the marks. Marks is not a criteria. So they check certain things where they want that, okay, technology is changing very fast. Can the student adapt? Can he come in and suddenly see something new? And can he adapt? How quickly can he adapt? These things employers primarily sees. So this has nothing to do with as such research, the kind of research that we talk about in academic institutions. These are research that you have to do to upgrade yourself.
So obviously this person is a bit concerned also around this whole notion because again another tweet's come in as well. You may create an IIT in every corner, but are there enough careers for them when they graduate?
Yes, that is a challenge.
That's a big challenge.
That's a big challenge.
Anil, this current government has made two major announcements. One, that they want to look at skill development very seriously, and two, that they want to look at the national education policy, because the last time that was looked at was 1986. Do you think then that these might actually be the two levers of the political will that you were talking about to perhaps look at this more seriously than just announcing a multitude of IITs?
Be seen this talk, but at some point I think it'll need to crystallize into policy papers and also implementation plans. I think it is would be timely, right? You look at how different society is today in India. Over the last couple of decades, there's been massive transformation. Uh, the opportunities available to students graduating from India are vastly different, and I'd say superior to what were available when I was graduating 20 years ago.
Right.
And need the demands of the corporate corporate world also are different. So rethinking the curriculum may not be a bad thing. Uh, so if you're talking, I'm happy to be a part of this discussion that we're talking about higher education in India. So if there are, if there's seriousness on the part of the government, it's a good thing. So we just have to see what they come out with.
Okay, just your last reactions as we wrap up the program. Another tweet from someone saying, rather than more IITs, why can't the government focus on improving the existing quality of engineering colleges and making these really world class?
Again, it doesn't have to be an either or situation.
Okay.
I'll just share one observation. Now, the numbers, someone can give you updated numbers. Let me use a statistic from my time, right? When there were, say, a couple of thousand people who were admitted into the IITs, or who were given the opportunity to claim a seat at the IITs. It expanded to say 3,000. It expanded to say 5,000. Today it may be close to 10,000. I've heard this from people who have professors at IIT that who administer the exams. It's very difficult to distinguish between someone who graduated or who got a rank in the top 2,000 and someone who may have ended up in 20,000, right? Talent is, you have a lot of talent who just cannot be accommodated. And think about this. For every 2,000 who get in, there are 20,000 people who are probably just as good, right? They may have had a slight lapse in concentration. They may have had a bad night's rest before they took the exams. So what, you want to deprive these people of access to the best resources in the country, the best education in the country? So that's where I think, if that's where this move to broaden the education base comes from, it's a good thing.
All right, it's a good thing. Thank you so much, Anil, for joining us there with those comments. And Nelson, lastly, what do you think will it take for this to really be a success?
Basically, you need to understand that what you want to get out of it, first of all. Do you want to expand the horizon to many students and create a mass kind of a knowledge base? Is that your objective? Point number 2. Are you willing to show that you have quality education with some additional numbers? That is point number 2. So these two are very critical. In terms of these two are distinguished by a very good slice of quality.
Okay.
So you have to do very good research before expanding even one. That you make sure that your faculties are in place, your infrastructure is in place, everything is in place. Then you expand, because once you expand, then there is no rolling back. Then if you are in trouble, every IIT gets in trouble.
Okay.
The whole brand gets in trouble. So let's be slow. That idea is very good. Let's be slow. Do a proper research that what we need to do, how we need to do, and when we need to do. If we identify these 3 points, then we can slowly go ahead and
the
make
key
this
thing is that we'll have to wait and watch what the grand strategy of this current government
Exactly.
is, how they're going to approach it, and what are the next steps. Thank you so much, Nelson. Thank you so much, Anil, for joining us there in this conversation. You too can continue the conversation by logging on to Twitter and writing to us #IndiaPostLive or @IndiaPostLive. Thank you for watching.